17 years ago, the world saw the release of two games that are, in many fans' opinions, some of the best Digimon games around. Digimon World Dawn and Dusk. The games were a sequel to the beloved but often more forgotten Digimon World DS and built upon it in every way that mattered. Or so I'd like to say anyway, but the story here isn't quite as simple. See, Digimon World Dawn and Dusk are quite curious cases. I swear lots of comments I found while researching for this video bashed the games to no end before going, so yeah, they're my favorites in the series. And after replaying the games myself to figure out what was happening, I get it. I really do. They are quite the contradictory experience. Deeply flawed in many ways, but I just couldn't stop playing. Even now that I'm done, I just want to start over and get some retro achievements or something. That's how much I enjoy the experience, despite it at times annoying me to no end for reasons that will soon become quite clear. My time with Dawn and Dusk, or rather specifically just Dusk since that's the version I played, was so fascinating to me that I decided to make this retrospective and share my thoughts on the game with all of you in order to hopefully answer the following question. Are Digimon World Dawn and Dusk worth a playthrough? 17 years after their release? And hey, even if you've already played the games, especially recently, and thus have no need to know the answer to the question, I hope you'll stick around anyway because I would love to hear from you. While I do have questions that I try to explore with my videos, the best part of making them will always be to listen to all your experiences with the games that I talk about. So if you have played this, I hope you'll share yours. But anyway, without further ado, welcome to a super lengthy video about Digimon World Dusk. Before we get into it, I'll do what I normally do in these sorts of videos and offer you all a story recap. It has, after all, been 17 years since the games were released, so if you haven't played them recently, chances are you do not remember the details of the story. If you do, however, feel free to skip this section of the video. I will add my own opinion to some story beats as I talk about them, but the meat of what I want to say will be after the recap, so you won't be missing much. I also won't really talk about stuff like the farm or each of the quests. This really is meant to be mostly a story recap. And just a quick reminder, I played Dusk for this video, so this will be a recap of the Dusk version. While the versions are similar, there are some key differences in the details of their respective stories, areas you can visit, quests you can obtain, etc. Hence why that I'm specifying that I play through Dusk. Alright, let's get into it. Digimon World Dusk starts off simple enough. You choose your character and then a pack consisting of 3 different Digimon, one of which is always Lunamon. If you're curious, for this playthrough I went with the defense pack. I really don't like the Digimon in there, especially Mega Kabuterimon Blue, but you know, it's good to do something crazy in life every once in a while, you know? After you choose your pack, you get a cutscene. Chief Julia and Chaos Gallantmon are telling a bunch of us tamers that we of the Night Crow cannot lose against the Light Fangs. As such, we are told to go train for the normal tournament. But since this is a video game and things never work out well, our training session with our mates is cut short by an earthquake that spawns Vilemon all over the area. I know these Digimon are all cute and stuff, I mean just look at their face. But in this specific scenario, they did not want love and cuddles, oh no, they wanted murder. We fight off a wave of them and go tell Julia what happened. We get to her and see a mysterious red figure laughing before it teleports away. Julia is left confused, but alas, nothing to be done. The game then fast forwards to the tournament day. We are in the final championship match, facing off against the main would-be protagonist from Digimon World Dawn, Ko. However, since he's not the protagonist in this version, he gets his ass handed to him and loses. Both teams congratulate each other on a good match before parting ways. Glare and Aphanimon, which are chiefs of the Light Fangs, leave first and are followed by the hooded red figure from the day prior. Julia and Chaos Gallantmon follow after the figure and alert Glare and his partner, allowing them to turn around and work with Julia to corner the hooded figure. Naturally, it laughs and teleports away much like it did the day prior. Since wearing a red hoodie and laughing is clearly very suspicious behavior, the two chiefs hurry back to their respective cities, worried about what might be going on. This is when we are introduced to the main city of Dusk, Dark Moon City. The layout here is very easy to learn and navigate, consisting of basically only 5 screens and other areas connected via teleports or buildings that you can enter. Which is very good since you're gonna be spending a lot, and I really do mean a lot, of time walking through the city. Once we get there, we go straight to the Tamer Union room to talk to Chief Julia. She congratulates us on the victory, but asks us to keep the whole hooded figure thing under wraps. Turns out, however, that keeping it under wraps would prove to be the least of our concerns, as alarms blare throughout both our city and Sunshine City, the Light Fang's territory. Now, we all know that whenever an alarm rings out, danger is afoot. Unless it's a fire drill or system malfunction, but let's just not think about those scenarios, okay? In this case, the danger was a purple skull-like creature that just teleports to both cities and transforms all Digimon into Digi-Eggs. Thankfully, we were inside our Digi-Home, which has a strict security, so instead of getting Digi-Eggs, all that happens is our Digimon get degenerated down to Rookie stage. Ever the hero, we rush to Dark Moon City Union Room and find Julia and Chaos Galumpmon under attack by the badass looking Purple Skull, which we managed to defeat without much trouble. However, despite being beaten, the damage had already been done. The virus managed to cut off the city's access to a lot of places in the network, and restoring said access would take a lot of work, with the exception of 3 areas which they managed to restore quite easily. Fearing what may have happened to the rest of the digital world, Julia asks us to investigate one of 3 areas. Sunken Tunnel. Don't you all love sewer levels? I would take the time to comment here on the level design, etc., but honestly, there is a lot to say, and it is one of the weak points of the game in my opinion, so I'll leave that to after this recap. At the end of Sunken Tunnel, we find and immediately get attacked by a Raremon. Afterwards, it seems confused, saying that it was kinda half asleep until it was beaten by us. Pro tip for all of you, if you want to wake up someone, beating them up seems to be a very effective method. Don't actually do that. We head back to the city and report to Julia. She has nothing else for us to do, so we go take on some quests. This is how you progress in the game. You have to clear side quests to gain Tamer points, which will then unlock the new Union quests, which are main story quests basically. The system is problematic to say the least, but again, I will save that discussion for after the recap. For now, suffice to say, we do 3 or 4 mind-numbingly boring quests before we jump into the next Union quest titled Explore Limit Valley. Can you guess what this Union quest is all about? If you can, I'll give you a cookie. Limit Valley is a new area that just showed up, and as such, we are tasked with exploring it alongside some other tamers. Good thing we have backup too, because at the end of the map we find the thing that attacked both cities. They, for some reason, claim that they were waiting for us and that they have new orders. Excuse me? We obviously defied the thing because, hey, nobody but Julia can boss us around, okay? It's very unhappy with us and 6 Caesarmon on us, which we easily beat. What we can't easily beat, however, is the pack of 3 Sandianmamon that the thing summons right after, but thankfully we don't have to. The other tamers arrive and take over for us while we attack the Purple Skull. Determined to crush us, it transforms into Grimmon and attacks, only to be beaten shortly afterwards. It says it will be back, and that we will perish by the hands of one of our own. Ominous much? We report all of this to Julia, who says that we need to be careful. Thanks for the advice there, boss. Some god knows how many quests later, we get the next Union quest. Sortie to Loop Swamp. Julia and Chaos Galumpmon tell us that a link has been re-established to Loop Swamp and ask us to go investigate as they identified illegal activity akin to the virus that attacked both cities. As the model minions that we are, we head straight there. It is a very annoying map that involves teleporting all over the place via whirlpools. It's hell, but you know, thanks to the power of editing in this video, we get to the end of the map super fast. There, we find the Skullbalukimon, and I really hope I'm pronouncing this name right. It assumes that we are his client and tries to give us a product, a virus to be precise. However, when asked for payment, we obviously can't produce any because we're super broke, just like in real life, and as such, we get attacked. After beating Skullbalukimon, it explains that it was hired to get an item, but since we busted the deal, he gives it to us instead. Honestly, top-notch business sense, my guy. The item is called the D-word, and it will allegedly help restore the city, which is still majorly damaged, with access to remote city locations cut off. We gladly take the D-word and give it to the chief, who's able to use it to restore access to a new area of the city. Not all of them could be restored though, as the virus built up a resistance to the D-word. The next Union quest is called Light Fang Assault. According to Julia, some of our tamer buddies were attacked by Light Fangs at Resisto Jungle, thus making us very suspicious that they were the ones that attacked Dark Moon City. Julia does not wish to act without proof, so she asks us to investigate. Sure enough, as we explore the jungle, we run into a few Light Fang tamers, all of which seem brainwashed and attack us on sight. We make quick work of them, until the last one shows up anyway. Remember Ko, the weakling from the normal tamer tournament? Yeah, he says we need to pay and attacks us. Upon being beaten, he gets all mopey, saying that he can't lose as justice is on his side. Which is funny, because I was pretty sure it was on our side. We tell Ko all about that, and he actually seems willing to listen. Until Julia calls and tells us to not fight the Light Fang and instead get the hell out of Resistor Jungle. Ko overhears the conversation and decides to follow our chief's orders, saying that we'll pick up the battle some other time. Sounds like excuses to me, but who am I to judge, right? Upon reporting back to Julia, she ponders if Light Fangs are working with the one that destroyed Dark Moon City, but then correctly points out that she can't say anything without proof. She also doubts a Union Tamer would do that, which, fair point, they probably wouldn't. Under normal circumstances anyway. She asks us to continue investigating alongside fellow Tamers, and we resume our side quest gameplay. After some 2 hours and like 3 side quests, the next Union quest arrives. It's called the Palette Amazon, and we have to, you guessed it, explore Thriller Ruins. Did you fall for that? If you did, you're either super gullible or I'm great at fooling people. Not sure what's worse here. Jokes aside, yes, as the very creative name implies, this quest has us exploring the Palette Amazon, as Julia has detected a strong virus signature there. We get to Palette Amazon and spend an hour lost trying desperately to find the end of the map, which thankfully we eventually do. There, we run into 2 of our tamer mates who have just lost a fight to a Mercurymon. We take their place and fight. First, Mercurymon sends 2 Fugamon. Then, it fights us. Thankfully, it's an easy fight, and after losing, it gives us an item called MD Word, which they had originally made for Skullbalukimon. Mercurymon is pissed off that we beat them up and leaves to go sleep. Given that I'm writing this 2:30 AM my time, yeah, that's a mood and a half. Much like the previous D item, Julia is able to use this one to restore a new part of the city, though not the entire thing. In the next Union quest, called Go to Thriller Ruins, we, well, go to Thriller Ruins. God, I actually love these uncreative names. The reason for our visit is as follows. Chief Julia and Chaos Galantmon have gone missing! And since this area was recently restored, Rygo, the gold tamer that's acting as chief for the time being, thinks the missing duo might be there. But alas, no such luck, all we find is despair. Well, that's an Agayomon who turns out to be a part of a company called Kowloon Co. alongside Skullbalukimon and Mercurymon. Speaking of, the 2 of those also show up and all 3 of them decide to attack us for interfering with their business. Before we can 3v1, however, Ko shows up and decides to take on the 2 weaker Digimon, while we get tasked with handling Gaiomon. It's a lengthy battle, but ultimately we emerge victorious, causing all 3 enemies to flee. All 3 also drop PD words. How clumsy of them. This time, however, instead of bringing them back to the city, we let Ko have them so he can restore his own city. This measure wins Ko's favor and we befriend each other. Turns out that both chiefs are being pitted against each other. Julia thinks that Glare is behind the attacks, while Glare thinks Julia is behind the attacks. We exchange emails, agree to share info, and leave. Back at base, Rygo thanks us for searching and tells us to be cautious. We are then free to go back to the thrilling side quest gameplay. Woohoo! After damn near an entire recording session for me, we get Union Quest number 8, Search the Digi Area. The quest starts as they often do in the Union Room. There, we see Raigo talking to Julia's Navi Digimon, a Digimon that takes care of her house. The Navi Digimon, an Impmon, says that it's been unable to contact her. No one has been able to contact her. As such, a full search of the Digi Area is organized, one in which we must participate. After leaving the Union Room, our tamer buddies also add the detail that more and more tamers are going out on expeditions and just not returning. This, alongside Chief Julia's disappearance, is very worrisome, so the tamers that remain all get together to try to find potential clues. We also invite Ko to the meeting, since he seems to be on our side. In the meeting, Ko says that everyone over at Sunshine City is acting weird, so he hasn't been able to go back to the city lately. Apparently, they started acting weird after visiting Limit Valley, which tracks as that's where we found and fought the virus and Grimmon. Ko also says that a lot of the quests people are taking are asking tamers to go to Access Glacier, meaning basically that they go there and just never come back. This signals to the group that this might be the next course of action, to explore the glacier and find out what's happening to the people that keep vanishing. While we personally do that, Ko goes back to Sunshine City to search for more clues, and the rest of the group either goes to Limit Valley or tries to find missing tamers in other maps. Sure, just stick the hardest and most dangerous part to us and us alone. Great plan there, mates, but you know, we are the protagonists, so I guess we can handle it. Access Glacier is an interesting map. One of the few that has actually cool gimmicks as opposed to an annoying one. It's actually 2 maps in one. Tubes connect the glacier to the seafloor, which is a whole other map called Macro Sea. Each map has its own set of Digimon, and traversing one often means traversing both, as sometimes you can only get to new areas of Access Glacier by going through Macro Sea and vice versa. It's actually a really nifty mechanic. We end up not having much time to enjoy it though, as before long we reach the end. There, Grimmon is holding a bunch of tamers, including Julia and even Chaos Galumphmon, hostage. They all seem to be under a virus influence. Ko is also there, but his mind is free and he's battling Grimmon. That turns out to be to no avail though, as we arrive just in time to see Ko being taken under the hypnotic influence of Grimmon. Upon spotting us, Grimmon goes into a rant about what it wants, and it's weird to say the least. The Digimon uses a lot of terminology never before mentioned in the game, such as Digi-Entelequia, Chrono DSR, Ymir, Yggdrasil, etc. A lot of this is Digimon lore, some of this is Digimon World DS lore, and some of it is indeed explained later on, but not all. For some players, especially new players, it gets quite confusing. But, you know, oh well. Grimmon vanishes and leaves us to deal with the brainwashed folks, specifically with Chaos Galumphmon who attacks us. Let me tell you, the maps I went through to get here did not prepare me for this fight. Way harder than the random encounters, but still doable. After Chaos Galumphmon is defeated, it wakes up and soon so do the rest of the tamers, including Julia and Ko. We then find out what happened. The duo went to Thriller Ruins to investigate something, and that's all they remember. Their theory is that they got attacked by the city virus and got infected. We all return, and upon research, Julia finds out that yes, they were infected with the virus. From it, they managed to make a vaccine that they also used to finish restoring Dark Moon City. Sweet. Ko is also with us, and Julia tells him to wait until the center bridge is complete to return to his city. Since he can't go back home, we agree to host him at our house. In one last cryptic moment, Julia asks if the enemy really did say Ymir. We confirm, Chaos Galumphmon goes, Julia, and then they dismiss us. Why would you do this to me, game? What do these two know? After another round of quests, we reach the next Union quest, the Merchant of Death. Upon reaching the Union room, Julia is talking to Spike, who's one of our tamer buddies, and listening in, we finally get the context we wanted for some of what's going on. Apparently, where the city now stands, there was once a laboratory that experimented with making Digimon age and evolve like humans. Put a lifespan on Digimon per se. Why were they trying to do that? No idea. Does it matter? I guess not. The experiment failed, but the data they made back then was now being used as the virus to corrode digital data. Furthermore, analysis has made Julia conclude that the enemy must be in Sunshine City, but in order to get there, we would need to restore the center bridge, something we are unable to do. As such, Chaos Galantmon asks us to go see Grand Drachmon, also known as the Merchant of Death, also known as the leader of Kowloon Co, and see if the Digimon can restore the bridge. After all, Kowloon Co's items have allowed for the restoration of other areas in the past. In order to find the Merchant of Death, we get access to a new area, Roxy Island. After 40 minutes of dealing with random encounters in the map, we get to the end and find our prize, Grand Drachmon. Turns out that the entirety of Kowloon Co is there and very upset that we invaded their hideout and that we've been interfering with their business. As such, they decide to attack us. But, you know, one at a time, because obviously beating up a kid 4v1 would hurt their reputation. And yeah, I guess I can see how. Honestly, I really like Kowloon Co. Great folks. Anyway, first up, we fight Gaiomon again, who deals a whopping 1 HP of damage to our party members. After beating Gaiomon, we don't fight the rest of the gauntlet. Instead, Grand Drachmon decides to hear us out. After hearing that the Union wants to commission them, they are all skeptical, but Grand Drachmon gives us a chance to prove ourselves. If we can beat it in a fight, it will know that it can trust us. And just like that, we fight. And just like that, we win. With that, Kowloon Co decides to take on the challenge of restoring the center bridge. At this moment in the game, I had a feeling things were ramping up to their conclusion, and sure enough, I was proven right when I saw the name of the next Union quest, the Final Battle. In the Union room, as we are talking about how we need to prepare to cross the center bridge, Ko and Scuba Lookymon come running, saying that we have trouble. Apparently, a bunch of Lightfang tamers are all gathering at the other side of the bridge, and Ko says that he got an order directed to all Lightfang members to cross the bridge and defeat the Nightcrow traitors. Kowloon Co puts a lock on the bridge program, protecting us for now, but it's a temporary measure at best. As such, only one option remains, for us to infiltrate Sunshine City and resolve the entire crisis by ourselves, obviously. And that's exactly what we do. Sunshine City is more or less a mirror version of our city, except more sunny and more shiny. Sorry, I really don't know what to say here. It's Sunshine City. It's sunny. It's shiny. Oh yeah, and one more thing, this one is full of hostile Digimon that want to kill us at every step of the way. I guess that's a minor difference worth mentioning. After a series of brainwashed tamer fights within Sunshine City, we eventually reach the Union Room, where Ophanimon and Glare reside. They call us real being and say that we are unneeded in the digital world. As such, they attack to delete us, but naturally they fail as we beat Ophanimon. The fight is enough to get Ophanimon out of the control of the chronocore that inhabited her, expelling it from her body. Turns out this is a sentient being that says its plans are already in final stages, opens up a huge dimensional hole behind Glare and flees right into it. Naturally, we go after it in this new map, the Chaos Brain. While confusing and full of Mega Digimon, the map isn't too difficult, and in 20 minutes we reach the end where Chronocore awaits. It merges with Grimmon, who's also there, and becomes Chaos Grimmon, the perfect Digimon. They claim to not understand how real beings like us can stand up to godly power, but ultimately decide that it doesn't matter, and attacks us. Despite them dealing big boy damage, we still win and beat the game. Or do we? As soon as the battle's over, Chaos Grimmon digivolves into Exo Grimmon and unleashes Chrono DSR, a move that knocks us into a dizzy state. The Digimon charges up another Chrono DSR, saying that it will erase us for good. Except it doesn't. Turns out the power of friendship saves us, and all of our friends call us to cheer us on. With this newfound incredibly valuable power, we get up and rush the boss. It's actually quite badass, really. 7 minutes later, the fight is over and the Chronocore vanishes, saying that maybe if Chronomon was there, everything would have worked out. And now that's it. Roll credits, good job us, we finished the game. Or did we? As soon as we check the Union quest counter, we find that a new one was added, called Gaia Origin Challenge. Turns out there is an ancient organization that watches over the digital world called Gaia Origin, and they challenge the Union to a fight. But Julia speculates that they likely just want to challenge us, the players, specifically, since this comes after the Chrono Data incident and Gaia Origin was never really interested in the Union before. As such, she sends us to challenge Gaia Origin at a new map called Transfield. This is actually quite a cool map with 4 different zones that look similar to maps we went to throughout the game. The map also comes with a massive difficulty bump, which is always a joy to see, really. Eventually, we got to the end of the 4th zone and find 2 Digimon, Sleepmon and Deathmon, or Leopardmon, whichever name you prefer. They explain that they are from the Gaia Origin and that they want a fight. So we oblige, and we win. After beating them, Apocalypse shows up, pissy that we had fun, and challenges us, in utter disbelief that the first 2 lost to a Union Tamer. Well, this guy also gets his ass handed to him. Next up is Susanomon, then Zed Millenniummon, followed up by the duo Alphamon and Omnimon. All tricky but very doable fights. After the duo, Beelzemon Blast Mode appears, wanting a fight too. Then, finally, Gallantmon Crimson Mode shows up. It says it's already aware of our skill and acknowledges us and the Union, but that it would still enjoy a fight. As such, we oblige and beat Gallantmon's ass. And that's the quest. As a post-game quest, it was basically a challenge for players to try to surpass. And surpass them I did, though I can't blame anyone for not doing so. Some of the fights were tricky, and all of them required the prep work of hours of grinding to raise up my whole team's stats and level. It was definitely not fun. The last tidbit of info we get is that Chaos Gallantmon was originally one of the Gaia Origin group, but that he left to help the Union. I can only assume Ilphanimon was the same. We also get a Beelzemon Blast Mode scan data, which is awesome. All in all though, this is more of a literal challenge quest than a substantial story addition. Just an excuse to fight a gauntlet of really hard Digimon, and trust me, it does the job. I had to grind a lot to get through this. All that done, there is only one more Union quest to explore, but again, it's more of a challenge than a story addition. In fact, it's even more challenging than Gaia Origin and required a few more hours of grinding in order for me to manage to get through it. The quest is called the Legendary Tamer, and it consists of joining a tournament, akin to that one in the beginning of the game, and fighting your way up to Legendary Tamer rank. Aside from being an excuse to have hard and challenging fights in the game, which, by the way, is not a criticism, I really dig that, this quest also serves to bring many cameos into the game, as you fight recognizable characters from other Digimon media, such as the main characters from Digimon Data Squad, which I assume was the anime running at the time the game was made. The most noteworthy thing about this quest is that the final opponent is a researcher from Digimon World DS, and that he has Chronomon Holy Mode in his team. Oh, and also of note is the fact that Julia was cheering for Ko during the tournament. 2 feet traitor, I swear. But anyway, after you beat Chronomon, you become the Legendary Tamer, which is great because it means that you're like the badassest of badasses, but it's also great because it means this recap is over. Hooray! Now I can get onto the part where I, too, bash the game and then say that I loved my time with it. Please put away your pitchforks, I'm just kidding. Well, kinda. There is a lot to love with Digimon World Dawn and Dusk, but there is also a lot of really questionable design choices in the games. Maybe it's a product of their time thing, who knows. There's a lot I want to talk about, so let's start with basic game mechanics, as they will help understand the points that come after. And honestly, I really like the basic game mechanics. As far as how the game works, Digimon World Dawn and Dusk are basic Nintendo DS era JRPGs. You walk around the maps, run into random encounters, have turn-based fights, find items tucked away off the beaten path, all that jazz. There are, however, 2 main aspects in which the games really stand out: the way combat works and the Digimon themselves. Combat in this game is, as I said, turn-based. However, the details really matter here, as the way said turn-based combat works is quite unique. Basically, both sides of a fight, so your team and the enemy team, are bound to a 5-zone system. This means every Digimon is in the zone, from 1 to 5, and yes, even your own team. If you put Digimon side by side, you get stat boosts. but you might be more susceptible to certain attacks. What I mean by that, and in my opinion this is what adds a lot of depth to the system, is that every attack in the game affects a certain amount of zones. The most basic attacks, for example, often hit only one zone of your choice. Others, however, affect 3 zones of your choice side by side. Others affect 3 but not side by side. So zone 1, 3, and 5. Others affect 2 zones of your choice. The list really does go on. I'm personally a huge fan of this system. It's very cool to try to arrange your party so that you have moves covering all the situations that you might need to deal with. Furthermore, most bosses actually occupy multiple zones at the same time, and let me tell you, there is nothing more satisfying than using an attack that hits 3 zones against a boss that occupies 3 zones. You just see the boss taking 3 hits at the same time, and it's great. Sure, the damage ideal is often asked on account of bosses being tanky, but hey, the actual numbers don't matter. Just the feeling of incredible power I get from hitting the enemy 3 times at the same time. Coupled with this zone battle system, you have all the staples that you could possibly want in a creature collecting battle system. Attacks in Digimon have types that are weak or strong against each other. Digimon can have 3 items equipped on them that give all sorts of effects. Digimon have different traits that alter their stats or battle capabilities, and the best part? Every single Digimon has its own exclusive move. All of this comes together to make combat a really pleasant experience, with a caveat that we'll get to later. So to sum it up, combat is really fun, and despite what it may seem from my explanation, straightforward and not hard at all to learn. Huge plus to the game here. But I mentioned 2 aspects that make the game stand out, and this is just one of them. The second is my personal favorite, the Digimon themselves. If you've been around the channel for a while, it should come as no surprise that I absolutely love creature collecting games. And if you're new here, just take a look at the page with all my videos and you're gonna see what I mean. Although you can really only be sure if you watch all my videos, so I guess you're gonna have to do that now. Totally not plugging my own content here, I'm just stating the unfortunate facts. Sorry. Lame jokes aside, yeah, I love convincing digital creatures to accept a lifetime of servitude, so it's only natural that I love the whole Digimon collecting aspect of Digimon. And as far as Digimon games go, this is one of the best in that regard. In Dawn and Dusk, you can collect almost 400 Digimon, which is one of the largest amounts of playable Digimon in the game in the franchise. Sure, some of them are either version exclusive or require the creation of eggs via matching with other players, but still, there is a good number of Digimon to play around with, including lots of the fan favorites you can imagine, and even their variations, like Gallantmon, Chaos Gallantmon, and Gallantmon Crimson Mode. Side note, if you prefer the name Dukemon, just pretend I said that instead. And honestly, there are some pretty obscure Digimon available here too, which is, to me, even better than having fan favorites you see in every single game. The playthrough I did for this video, for example, introduced me to Lampmon, which I had no idea existed. And according to the wiki, it was in like 2 of the many games in the franchise. And this is just one example, there's way more obscure Digimon to be found. Going into a new area and seeing what you could run into was always a joy precisely for this reason. Always a chance you'd run into some weird creature you've never seen before. The way to actually get these obscure Digimon, the fan favorites, and everything in between might be a turn-off to some of you, but it certainly wasn't for me. You can find a lot of them in maps, and if you find them enough, you gain scan data that you can then, once it hits at least 100%, convert to a Digimon. That's the easy method. But then there's the potentially annoying one, Digivolution, which at the same time is the very defining feature of Digimon. If you know nothing about the franchise and are watching this because of my unmatched charisma and ridiculously soothing voice, then here's what you need to know. Digimon in this game have 5 stages. In training, which are like baby Digimon, rookies, champions, ultimates, and megas. The evolution path is not exactly linear either. A single in-training Digimon will often be able to digivolve into 3 different rookies, who might be able to digivolve into 2 different champions, etc. Personally, this is a huge factor as to why I love Digimon games. They really lean into the whole concept of data being able to become anything. So far, so good, right? The potential problem comes in when you actually try to digivolve. Whenever you even can digivolve, as lots of lines just don't really get to Mega or even close. Take a look at this Hawkmon line, for example. It's literally just Hawkmon to Aquilamon. And that's it. I know a lot of these end up being DNA Digivolution fodder, but still, if you lack that knowledge, it just feels bad to hit dead ends with your Digimon. And if you're wondering what the heck a DNA Digivolution is, don't worry, we'll get there soon. As for Digivolutions that do go somewhere, here's how they work. In Digimon World Dawn and Dusk and lots of the other Digimon games, you'll need to meet certain requirements to digivolve. These requirements are often easy, like hitting a certain level and getting to a specific number in a specific stat. Kagurumon to Gardevoir, for example, requires level 20 and 105 defense. Pretty easy to reach. However, as you get closer to Mega level, things get more complicated. Andromon, for example, needs level 50, 250 spit. Look, I know SPT is spirit, but I just can't not read it as spit, okay? And 15k machine experience, as in this game, each Digimon you beat gives their own type of experience. A Dragon Digimon gives Dragon experience, for example, so in Andromon's case you have to grind some machine-type Digimon to get him there. But High Andromon must be a low-tier Mega because its requirements are still pretty doable. And just to be clear, High Andromon carried my team, so I take offense to my own statement, okay? Let's now take a look at the Kotemon line. It ends in Puppetmon, who requires level 55, 20,000 machine EXP, and got Macdramon. And yes, I am paraphrasing here. That means in order to get Puppetmon, you must have gotten Machine Draymon first. Well then, how do you get Machine Draymon, you might ask? Well, aside from its specific evolution requirements, which I can't seem to find online, you also need to get Metal Seadramon first, which you either get from scanning and training up a Seadramon in Loop Swamp, or scanning from Macro Sea in the postgame. So basically, to get Puppetmon, you have to first train 2 other Megas. And that's not even close to being one of the most demanding evolutions, as we haven't even talked about DNA Digivolutions. A lot of Digimon are locked behind DNA Digivolutions. If you combine 2 Digimon, one of 2 things happen. Either you use the second Digimon to increase the first stats, or you create a new Digimon entirely. The second outcome often requires not only the usage of 2 specific Digimon, but they must also be on the right level, have specific species EXP, and even other requirements, like a specific amount of happiness or having gotten another Digimon beforehand, like in Puppetmon's case. If you fail to reach all the requirements, the first outcome, so, one Digimon eating the other, happens. And how do you know these specific requirements, you might ask? Well, the game does tell you some DNA Digivolution recipes, but not nearly close to all of them. To this day, I have no clue how you're meant to find all of them if not by trial and error or googling, but I do have access to a handy, wonderful spreadsheet created by a community member. I'll link it down in the description. According to it, Shine Greymon Burst Mode, for example, requires a Shine Greymon and a Gallantmon or Imperiodramon Fighter Mode, both at level 68+, Friendship 100%, and it also requires you to have gotten Shine Greymon Ruin Mode, which by itself is a DNA Digievolution between Shine Greymon and Darkdramon, requiring level 59+, Dark EXP at 24k, and attack at 335 or more. And honestly, that's not even getting into the specific evolution requirements to even reach Shine Greymon, Darkdramon, Gallantmon, and / or Imperiodramon Fighter Mode. So yeah, some evolution lines can get pretty crazy. And by crazy, I mean grindy. It's definitely not for everyone, but I personally really like this convoluted system. There's just something about putting in the work and getting badass Digimon in return that hits all the right notes for me. Another point that I so far neglected to mention is that you can't just digivolve your Digimon, but you can also degenerate them. In fact, this is a major mechanic in the game. That's actually how you reach some of the more absurd stat requirements for evolutions. Every time you degenerate, you retain some of the stats you had, so you gradually and permanently increase your stats. Degenerating also puts you back at level 1, just like digivolving, So for a couple of encounters, especially late game, you get a ton of levels at a time, and it just gives me that sweet dopamine hit to see the numbers quickly going up. But I will admit that this can also be a nuisance, as the game unequips whatever equipments your Digimon have to account for you potentially no longer meeting the minimum level requirement to equip the item in the first place. But the best part of degenerating is that you can theoretically, and I'm sure some of you have done this, have a nim training Digimon that just steamrolls everything in the game with max stats. Hell, the game even demonstrates this in the Platinum Tamer rank upgrade fight. Let me tell you, this Kuramon and Minomon fight still haunts my dreams. So to sum it up, you have lots of options, some of which require lots of grinding, and you have a ton of freedom regarding who to build. With Degeneration, which also allows you to maintain your moves you learned from more evolved forms, aside from the Digimon exclusive moves I mentioned, pretty much any Digimon is viable if you try hard enough. And just to be clear, by try hard enough, I mean grind hard enough. Can you already tell that this game gets quite grindy? Just one final piece of the puzzle that I have yet to tell you. This game has something called the Digifarm that really helps with the grind. If you're trying to build a DNA Digivolution fodder, for example, and just need to hit a certain stat requirement, you can stick that Digimon in a farm and use farm goods that train that specific stat. Process takes a while, but hey, anything helps, right? So yeah, that's how the base game mechanics work. I really dig them, but they are not for everyone, especially because they are surrounded by some severe problems that I'll talk about shortly. Before though, I'll just finish gushing about the game. While I'm here blabbing on and on about how Digivolution works and how much I like the Digimon in the game and their surrounding systems, I realized that I haven't even talked about the best part of Digimon, their sprites. Honestly, you all, take a look at this gorgeous beast, or this incredibly awesome lineup, or this ridiculously cute creature. And the kick-ass design doesn't stop at the Digimon. Everything in this game is visually top-notch. The areas themselves get repetitive as you travel through them because the environment isn't varied within a map, but make no mistake, areas look great, it's just that there's no variation. The people, the overall Digimon sprites, everything looks awesome, provided you like the pixelated look anyway. I'm a sucker for it, so this really is right up my alley. And while I'm talking about the art and visual design of the game, I might as well mention that the music in these games is top-notch. Unfortunately, some of the areas share the same background music, which makes them feel repetitive at times, but I really enjoyed some of the tracks so much that I didn't really notice this problem. My favorite background music is from the Digifarm. Have a listen so I can sell you on it. Another thing that I really enjoy is the neat extra features that the games have. One that's really easy to notice is the fact that your Digimon follows you around, a fact that remains the case even in some of the most recent games in the franchise. Now, if only Game Freak would take a page out of Digimon's book. But there's more. If you listen to my story recap, you might remember that in the beginning of the game, a virus transforms all of the Digimon in your city into eggs. Well, as you play through the game, you get to see all the Digimon in the city evolving to what they previously were. For me, it was always really cool to finish a mission and then, when touring the city, notice that the Digimon managed to digivolve. It gave the impression that the city wasn't stagnated and that everyone was hard at work getting back on their feet, which I really appreciate. Digimon following you or the city changing constantly wasn't something the devs needed to implement, yet they did, and I really appreciate that. I'm having fun so far gushing about the game, but unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and so too must my gushing. Remember how I said in the beginning of the video that this game was in many ways quite a contradictory experience and that there is a bunch of severe flaws, but the end result is enjoyment anyway? Well, it's time to talk about the ugly parts of Digimon World Dawn and Dusk, starting with story progression. If you played the game or listened to the recap, you already know this, but basically in order to progress through the story, you must complete side quests. They give you tamer points, which are required to continue the main story. Lots of games do this, so you might be wondering why I'm singling out Digimon World Dawn and Dusk specifically. And for the longest time, I'll admit that I had no idea why. All I knew was that having to do a bunch of quests in order to progress felt extra bad here compared to other games. After pondering for some time, I think I finally reached an answer as to why I really didn't like the progression system here. Or rather, answers. First off is simple. These games are a sequel to Digimon World DS, which had roughly the same playtime as Dawn and Dusk. However, Digimon World DS did not gate story progression with side quests, which to me indicates that the story there is simply longer. And thinking about it, yeah, it sure feels like it. So basically we have a smaller story bloated to the same length with uninteresting side quests. And yeah, as you're about to see, they really are mostly super dull. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Digimon World DS and Dawn/Dusk are different games, so you can't compare them like this. And I get what you're saying, but given that the duo is a sequel to the first game, I just can't let go of the fact that the story progression method feels like a downgrade. And since we're on the topic of comparing, the reason why I feel other games don't bother me as much with the reliance on side quests is that in other games, the progression via quests feels more disguised or integrated into the story. You can often continue getting story quests, but they will eventually be super high level when you're gonna have to do side quests to continue. Or ideally, the side quests will be so interesting that you're going to want to do them to figure out what tale they have to tell. Digimon World Dawn/Dusk succeeds in neither of these things. It just flat out tells you, hey, you need to take on quests if you want to continue the story. You even get them at a service counter. There's no chance of anything special happening, like you finding, oh, I don't know, some piece of Digimeat sitting in an altar, grabbing it, hearing a thunderous voice saying that you tainted a divine offering, thus starting a quest in which you must find more meat for this mysterious meat god that in the end turns out to be a Lopmon trolling you with something. No, lots of your quests come from a counter. It's a bit of a soulless way of acquiring quests that feel mostly equally soulless, with the potential exception of farm quests, which are quests that you acquire by having specific Digimon with specific personalities, which are basically like Pokemon natures in your farm. I was not in the mood to get all of them done, but I would wager most people won't naturally come across them either. Though I do have to say the game does tell you how to get a few of the quests, but much like the DNA Digievolutions, they don't tell you nearly all of them. Let me give you an example of what I mean by soulless. One quest has a Kokomon ask you to find their pink lipstick that they dropped in the forest. They are too scared to get it because it's Nanimon territory. That's it. Another has Palmon asking you to find the owner of a katana in Loop Swamp, as there is a rumor the owner is attacking Digimon left and right, and thus Palmon's afraid of going there. In another quest, Asnimon, and again I hope I'm pronouncing this right, sends us to a jungle to ask Lilymon what's going to grow out of a mystery bulb that Asnimon found. And I can't even remember what exactly the answer was because it's just nothing dangerous or interesting. These are just 3 examples, but the quests really are as simple as they sound. You go through a map, find the NPC/item you need, go back to the quest giver, and it's over. Sometimes the game does mix things up, such as in the Lilymon quest, which has you talking to multiple NPCs trying to track down Lilymon's location, but this shake-up of the formula often makes the experience worse. Take, again, the Lilymon quest as an example. You get to resist the jungle and you only have one objective in mind: to find Lilymon. However, as you walk, what you find first is Gabumon. Since NPCs just don't appear in maps outside of the city unless you're doing a quest, it stands to reason that this Gabumon is tied to the quest. Sure enough, as we talk to it, it says that the last I heard, Lilymon was on its way to talk to Woodmon. Alrighty then, off to find Woodmon we go, except I just couldn't find him. I spent 20 minutes exploring the entire map, and this was with the speed up feature from emulating the game, and I even ended up in another map completely by accident without finding Woodmon. Now, do you care to take a guess where it was? At the entrance to the map, right before Gabumon. Unfortunately, the game does not spawn all the NPCs a quest needs at once. Oh no, you have to talk to an NPC, and if there's another NPC to find, you're gonna have to re-explore the entire map. which is extremely annoying for several reasons I'll get into soon enough. Like, come on game, was it really that hard to spawn all the NPCs and just have them each say something dismissive before it was their turn to talk in the quest? It's not even that the game is unable to have multiple NPCs active in any given map, as after talking to Woodmon, both Woodmon and Gabumon remain in the map until you're done with the entire quest. Sure, you can often guess where someone might have spawned, because the maps have lots of dead ends that are usually where NPCs spawn, but still, guesswork, even if educated, is still just guesswork and not an exact science. So yeah, progressing through the game is a bit of a frustrating experience, and I really wish that either the side quests were interesting and obtained organically, or that the story didn't need those in order to happen. Credit where it's due though, you don't need to do all side quests, just enough to get whatever arbitrary amount of tamer points you need to unlock the next story quest. And also, not all side quests are bad. All of them are fetch/simple task quests, don't get me wrong, but a few at least have interesting premises. One that made me laugh was when Bomber Nanimon asked us to go apologize to Prince Mamamon for accidentally blowing up his house. I just had to laugh at the sheer gall of the quest giver. You bomb someone's house by accident and then ask us to apologize? Like, hey man, I got hired to say sorry your house got blown up. If you're wondering how that goes, naturally it doesn't go well. Prince Mamamon calls us out for being Nanimon's friend and is like, oh, the furniture was custom made, how dare you, and attacks us. So in a single day, the Digimon both loses his house and gets beaten up by the guy that was hired to apologize. Honestly, if I'm ever unhappy with my life, I'll try to think, hey, at least I'm not Prince Mamamon. That's what I mean though. With a quest like this, you have something to look forward to, in this case, the absurdity of it all. How will Prince Mamamon react to such an absurd situation? And yeah, it didn't disappoint. But when you get a quest from a Tanemon who wants you to find a mushroom they like, what do you really have to look forward to? Tanemon's reaction to eating the damn thing? There's nothing to indicate it'll be interesting, like, say, Captain Holt's reaction to eating a marshmallow. And the side quest issues, especially the one where NPCs spawn in the map and you have to re-explore everything whenever someone new shows up, get exacerbated by my second major gripe with the games: the map design. Some of you might enjoy the map design, but for me, it absolutely sucks. There's really no other way to put it. Most, if not all, maps are composed exclusively of narrow paths that branch off into multiple directions, most of which end up in dead ends, and even worse, some end up looping around back to other parts of the map. You can mitigate this problem by using the stylus, or mouse if you're playing on an emulator, to drag your screen around and check where you're going, to save yourself the headache of running into a dead end, or multiple. However, this doesn't entirely fix the problem, as not many players even know this is an option. And even for those who do, you can really only check the screen you're in. Every map is composed of multiple screens that are separated by, well, screen transitions. This is normal in a lot of games. However, here it ends up being a bit of an issue because you can't really use your drag tool to check other screens. So you travel through a screen thinking you're getting to your objective, only to find out that the entire screen is one colossal dead end. Because I'm an absolutely insane person, I decided to manually draw a map of Resisted Jungle and prove my point. Sure, I'm not the world's best cartographer, but even though my ability to draw straight lines sucks, I think any of you can see how confusing the entire map is. And honestly, I didn't even draw the Dark World, or whatever it's called. One of the portals in this map leads to a Dark World, which, if you traverse, leads you out into another map, Login Mountain if I recall correctly. So if I were to draw the whole chain, this already confusing labyrinth of a map would look even more unhinged. And if you're curious, to dissect this map even further, this part that I'm circling right now is a colossal one-screen dead end. Now, this is the teleport point in which you enter the map. Around here is where you first find Gabumon in that quest I talked about some minutes back, and around here is where Woodmon shows up. So yeah, you can see just how much I had to walk in that damn quest before I exited the map, came back and found Woodmon where once there was none, and was left fuming. And while I showed one example, trust me, most if not all maps in this game really are labyrinthian in structure. Like, remember when I said that you can find hidden items if you venture off the beaten path? The problem with that statement is that most of the time you won't even know where the beaten path is meant to be. If you're a person with a terrible sense of direction, chances are you're gonna have a horrible time with this game. And honestly, Resistor Jungle is one of the simpler maps. Some, like Sunken Tunnel, have environmental gimmicks that make traversal harder. For example, in this one, you have columns of water dropping from pipes and they impede your progress. In order to stop them, you need to turn off a valve. So what can happen is that, on your first go through the map, you run into a split in the path, choose to go one way, only to end up with your progression barred a couple of screens later due to the water, forcing you to go back to the split in the path and choose the other path to find the valve. Loop Swamp is another example. You have to step into whirlpools to teleport between areas, and some link back to previously explored areas. It's really not a fun time. By now, some of you might be thinking, "Ah, big deal, all this means is that your character gets some extra cardio, should help their heart." Well, much as I would normally agree with you that exercising is important, you're missing a vital piece of the puzzle here. Remember early on when I said that there is a caveat to the awesome combat in these games? Well, the caveat is that the random encounter rate in this game is extremely overtuned, and I do not say this lightly. You find random encounters so often it's not even funny. Take a look at the gap between encounters and the footage I'm playing while I'm talking. It may not look too bad, but combined with the map design that makes you go through a bunch of dead ends before you find the destination, it's hell. I'm sure the Pokemon veterans amongst you might think, as I once did, that you could just use a repel item, but alas, this game has none. That's right, as far as I could find, there is no way to prevent random encounters. And to make matters worse, every single battle you start has to play the animations of the enemy Digimon showing up and being scanned. I'll stop talking now while this battle against a lot of Digimon loads, just so you get the full Digimon World Dusk random encounter experience. Sure, it's a few seconds of time lost, but keep in mind this happens every fight and you never spend more than 30 to 60 seconds without a random encounter. So that's a lot of time watching animations. And that's not even considering the animations for attacks, some of which are also quite long. Don't believe me? Take a look at this then. And no, you cannot turn off the animations. The cherry on the shit cake is that a lot of the quests just flat out change the map. Like you enter the map through a different location. This may be a whatever thing to most of you, but to me, it was really confusing. I have already learned the map and then I spawn elsewhere within it because I'm on a quest and I have to get my bearings all over again. Now, again, to give credit where it's due, the game realized it was incredibly annoying to navigate its maps and tried to mitigate it in some ways. The game is unfortunately not great at explaining its systems over the course of the story, but one thing that is mentioned is that you should get gate discs, things that allow you to teleport back to base, instead of having to walk to a teleportation point in the map. Something else is that, while some quests start you off in different areas of the map, lots of quests also just close off areas of the map entirely with these red walls, making the area you can search smaller, so that you don't need to reach the very end of the map and have to potentially turn back quite a few screens to find your objective in a random dead end. Plus, there is the aforementioned feature to use the stylus or mouse to drag the screen and make sure you're not running into a nearby dead end. Still, I really do feel like none of these measures are enough to fix the problem per se, they just serve to mitigate it. One last bit of criticism that's not really a problem for me, but that I have to mention because many people do complain about it, is how grindy the games get. I already told you all about the Digivolution grind, but grinding is also required if you want to just finish all the main quests, which include post-game quests, which is where the problem mostly lies. I didn't have to stop and grind to clear the game, but both post-game main quests? Yeah, 100%. There is a big difficulty spike in quests 11 and 12, and I am not kidding when I say that I had to grind for hours in order to get each of them done. As I said, it doesn't really bother me because I just tune into a podcast or watch videos on the second screen, but still, it's worth mentioning because it might be a problem for you. Now, I know so far I only mentioned 3 major gripes with the game, which might seem a bit underwhelming considering what I said about bashing the game and saying I love it at the same time, but at least for me, these flaws, especially the first and the second I mentioned, would absolutely stop me from playing other games if it weren't the Digimon franchise. The map thing is especially frustrating to deal with, and there were moments in which I wrote down some unhinged notes to remind myself of how frustrated I was feeling. And that's not even to mention the many paragraphs of pure rage that resulted from the dumb Gabumon and Woodmon quest. This is why these games are a contradiction to me. I absolutely hate some of the game design decisions they went for, but at the same time I pushed through them and loved the experience as if they weren't there, despite them annoying me to no end as I'm dealing with them. And that's not even all there is to the issues. Here's a few more minor ones in a bit of a more rapid-fire format. The story can be confusing for someone who doesn't know Digimon lore, or hasn't played Digimon World DS, with name drops of Ymir, Yggdrasil, Digi-Entelekia, and more, without any explanation until hours and hours later. And in fact, I found the story in general lackluster, though that's admittedly extremely subjective. The final post-game quest, the Legendary Tamer, is locked behind a few prerequisites, one of which is to connect via Wi-Fi or via wireless to another Tamer. Wi-Fi in Nintendo DS has long been gone by now, so if you're playing the physical game and want to have the full experience, your only hope is to modify the game somehow, or to find someone with a copy of the game and meet up with them in real life. And I don't know about you, but good luck getting me to go outside to get my Digimon laid with someone else's Digimon. Some of the English translations are just wrong. For example, I chose the female model to play as, Sayo is her name if you're curious, and the game called me a she or her throughout the game, until the end when I turned into a he. But perhaps the most well-known mistranslation was the team names. Light Fang is correct, but Nightcrow was actually meant to be Nightclaw, which makes a lot more sense being a direct opposite to the Light Fangs. And with that last one, that's it. That's all the good and the bad that I had to point out. But since I don't actually like to just criticize something without saying how it can be improved, here's a whole session of the video dedicated to discussing possible improvements for the issues, or at least attempts to explain why they exist. Beginning with the maps, there are 2 very simple changes that I would make if I were creating a remaster of these games. First is to actually spawn all the quest's NPCs as soon as you enter the map. Make it so you still have to talk to them in order, sure, but don't just keep them from spawning until it's their turn in the quest. It's really frustrating to have to re-explore a whole map every time you talk to an NPC, and this simple change would really improve the whole experience. And you wanna know what else would really improve the whole experience? A map. Kinda like the one I made in Pains and showed earlier, except, you know, not incredibly shitty. The game doesn't even have to give us the full map unlocked when you enter a new area, just make it so the map gets revealed and saved as you walk through the area. Then, subsequent attempts at the area would be a lot less frustrating since you'd be able to look at the map screen and guide yourself through the labyrinths that way. As for the quests, there is no easy band-aid fix for either them or the progression. The devs would really need to just redo the quests and actually make them interesting. But while I can't give a solution to this problem, I can explain why I think the game works the way that it does. That is, with the forced quests, the hard to navigate maps, the extremely high random encounter rate, and even the NPC spawning system that forces you to walk through a map multiple times. The answer to all of this is the same. The game is forcing you to grind. Since you're constantly going back to level 1 from digivolving or degenerating, it's important to fight a lot of enemies. In fact, I can safely say that I believe this back and forth through areas and the frustration I faced enduring all these issues are the reason why I didn't have to grind at all until I was about to face the post-game quests. It almost feels as if the game was balanced around these inconveniences, which, for better or worse, force you to accumulate levels. In that sense, perhaps rebalancing the game to need less in terms of levels would allow them to cut out these obnoxious game design choices, but who knows. While there is no easy game design change for every major problem I pointed out, there is one quick band-aid fix that is surprisingly effective, and really prevents most of these from being annoying. Playing the game on an emulator and using the speed up feature. That's it. Digimon World Dawn and Dusk feel like games that really do get enhanced by having the feature. Labyrinthian maps are suddenly not as annoying when you can just put the game at 500% speed, spam moves and power walk your way everywhere at unbelievable speeds. The long ass battle animations go by with the blink of an eye if you're speeding the game up. The quests are suddenly a lot faster to complete and as such do not stick around for long enough to make a hugely negative impression. The list goes on, but I think you get the gist of it. If you do play the game on an emulator, do yourself a favor and use the speed up feature. One last thing I want to point out is that the most recent Digimon story games, Digimon Cyber Sleuth, have managed to correct a lot of what I mentioned as being issues, as well as improve the overall formula. In Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory, for example, you still have to progress through quests in order to unlock story missions, but the quests there don't bother me nearly as much as the ones in Dawn and Dusk, simply because the obligatory ones are a lot more interesting. Some of them anyway. And also, they tend to be a lot faster on account of not involving extremely convoluted maps and NPCs that show up whenever they please. I've actually been replaying Hacker's Memory, and I found that I really do get invested in a lot of the side quests. One had me investigate an elevator that was said to drop people off at a floor that didn't exist. Another had me try an urban legend to see if I could summon a ghost, and it worked. Another series of quests involve harassment and even threats from a costume character. It's ridiculous, it's wild, and I'm all for it. And don't get me wrong, while I'm highlighting the quests, lots of improvements were made to the formula itself, such as the protagonist being able to keep 12 Digimon with him instead of 6. There were also steps backwards, but I'll leave those for a future video about the Cyber Sleuth series. Alright, now I'm done. To truly wrap things up, I guess we should revisit the question. Are the games worth a playthrough 17 years after their release? To me, yes, but you have to know what you're getting yourself into, because in essence, Digimon World Dawn and Dusk really do not value the player's time as much as they should. If you're okay with grinding a lot and just speeding up through the repetition and you enjoy collecting monsters, you will love these games. As for me, I just want to say that I genuinely, absolutely love these games. Even though I was dealing with the substantial frustrations I mentioned, I still had a really good time playing through everything and collecting the Digimon I like. But I guess that's normal, isn't it? Nothing in the world is perfect, and if I or anyone let the fact stop me from enjoying something, I feel like I would lead a very lonely life. Fingers crossed we one day get a collection of older Digimon titles and that it includes this one with at least some of the points I raised fixed. Until that happens though, the only thing that's left to do, and honestly my favorite part of any video I make, is to ask you all for your opinions. What do you think of Digimon World Dawn and Dusk? I know they are nostalgic titles for a lot of people. Is that the case for you? What memories do you associate with the games? Do you agree/disagree with my points? These are just questions to maybe get you started on a comment, but really feel free to say whatever you wish. I'm just happy to hear you all out and interact however possible. And if you enjoyed the video and want more, I am pleased to say that I have a video on the channel about the prequel to these two titles, Digimon World DS. The link should be on the top right of your screen by now. It's a bit of a different style compared to this one, because in that video I tried to do the whole commented playthrough thing, but hey, the few people that watched it seem to enjoy the video, so who knows, maybe you will too. I'm fully planning more Digimon content in the future, but for now this is all I have. I do have a bunch of Pokemon videos though, if you're okay with other monster collecting games. I'll leave the link to a playlist with those down in the description. And with all that said, all that's left is for me to ask you to please like the video and subscribe to the channel if this video was in any way enjoyable, informative, or if you overall took something from it. I normally ask people to comment too, but I already had a whole paragraph dedicated to giving questions and explaining that I love comments, so I'll refrain from bothering you all too much with this. Though just know that comments are very appreciated, more so than anything else. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you hopefully in the next video. Bye bye!